Okay, good day, everyone. Welcome to another session on strategic financial management. These are practice to pass question practice sessions on top tested areas for the strategic financial management exams. So for today, our focus would be on risk, advanced risk management. The ICANN syllabus requires that you know how to manage two classes of risk. The first is currency risk, and the second is interest rate risk. So we're going to start with currency risk by practicing with these questions. And just a quick recap of what we would achieve with this topic and why we're doing this topic. So let's spend a few minutes, say 5-10 minutes, to do just a high-level overview of currency risk. And currency risk management, it basically involves managing adverse movement of exchange rate between when you enter into a transaction and when you consummate that transaction. And so take, for example, that as a business, you have the need to, say, buy a piece of machine in 3 months' time. And right now, possibly the exchange rate is, let's just write a little bit. So assuming you as a businessman, you had a plan in place, the contract in place to buy machinery in 3 months' time. So let's just keeping it simple, assuming that the machinery would have cost you $1 million, would cost you $1 million rather. And right now, the exchange rate, just to keep it simple, right now the exchange rate is 1,000 naira to $1. So what that basically means is that if you paid for the machinery now, you would have spent 1 billion naira to buy that machine. However, the payment is not due now, or you don't have the resource to buy or to procure that machinery now. You're looking at procuring the machinery in 3 months. You're looking at procuring the machinery in 3 months. And in that 3 months' time, possibly maybe due to the conflict in the Middle East, maybe escalating further than it is now, they expected that in 3 months' time, the exchange rate would be 1,500. And if the exchange rate becomes 1,500, you would end up spending 1.5 billion. And that is an extra of 500 million between now and waiting to consummate the transaction in 3 months. And that's a lot of money. And that would definitely impact on your bottom line as well as your costs. So currency risk management then asks ourselves, or tries to answer the question, how do we protect ourselves against such adverse movement? So how do we protect ourselves? What actions can we take to protect ourselves against the adverse movement? Now, the illustration we've just done here would be for someone who is importing or someone who is buying something. It's also important to note that even those who are exporting are also concerned about adverse movement in interest rate. But this time, for those who are importing, they're concerned about the risks that their currency will strengthen against the foreign currency. For those who are importing or procuring something involving the foreign currency, they are concerned about the fact that their currency will weaken. So what do we mean by that? Someone who is importing, someone who is exporting rather, if the exchange rate, for example, was 1.5, now, and maybe they sold something for $1,000. If the exchange rate is 1.5 now, they would have gotten the naira when they convert the $1,000 or they receive salary of $1,000, whatever they're receiving as inflow, they would have gotten 1.5 million. However, the inflow doesn't come in until, say, in 6 months' time. And let's assume that in 6 months' time, things get really favorable and the exchange rate drops. The exchange rate drops from 1.5 to 1,000 or even 1,200. So that's just to keep it separate from the example above. Or it drops to even say 1,200. So instead of them receiving 1.5, they would end up receiving 1.2. So you can see that they have a drop in what they receive by waiting between now and 3 months' time before the money or the inflow comes in. And so it asks the question, how do we protect ourselves? How do we help our businesses protect themselves against those adverse movements in exchange rate? And that's the focus of this adverse movement in currency exchange rate. And that's the focus of the currency exchange rate as a topic. So our purpose is to practice, but let's just highlight quickly different methods of protecting ourselves against exchange adverse movement in exchange rate. Now, there are different methods that are involved. However, these methods have been split between FM and SFM. So what we mean by that is that for some of the methods, it's covered under the FM syllabus, while some other methods are covered under the SFM syllabus. And so because questions of practicing, it's a question that was said before the new syllabus, we're only going to focus on the methods that are applicable for the SFM exams. So what are these methods? So let's list out the methods and let's see. Okay, so what are these methods for SFM? So these methods for SFM are forward rate agreements. So you need to know how to manage exchange rate using forward rates agreements. What is generally referred to as forwards or FRA. So that's the first method. You need to know how to protect yourself against adverse movement using futures, currency futures. You need to learn how to protect yourself using currency options, which is also referred to as traded options. As a general term, please help us mute yourself, you're not speaking with us, please. Which as a general term, it's also referred to as traded options. And finally, for the purpose of the SFM exams, you need to learn how to protect yourself using currency swaps. Currency swaps. Okay, so those are the methods you need to know with regards to currency. There are some other methods as well, like I mentioned. It's it's other methods as well that will move to FM. So if we're solving a question and it has method that has to do with FM, we will just keep those methods. So for FM, I'm showing for those of you that did complete FM, you would have learned methods such as money market rates. I can also replicate FRA in FM as well. So we have FRA in both FM and SFM, but in SFM takes it a little bit more advanced. So you would for FM you would have done FRAs. For FM you would have done the money market rates or money market. And then for FM as well, you would have done a number of internal hedging techniques. So you would have done a number of internal hedging techniques involving home currency, netting, and all of that. So if our question has any of these methods, we would skip it because those are FM. Those are methods that have been moved to FM, and then we'll focus on just this one. So let's go right to our question, and then we can then practice our question. So hopefully our question would allow us to either practice all 4 methods or at least 3 of the methods. Because oftentimes when I can test this question, they put at least 3 of the methods, 3-4 of the methods in a single question. So once we can do that, that keeps you in a very good position on currency risk management. All right, so let's get right into it. So the question in front of us is November 2023, question 2. So just a quick check before we get right into it. Can you guys confirm you can see the question in front of you? Just a quick check. All right, thank you. All right, thank you. Okay, guys, so let's get right into our question reading, and then we can then head on with the solution. Okay, right into it. About one. Okay, guys, so let's get right into it. About 1 year ago, you were employed. Please mute yourself, you're not speaking with us. About 1 year ago, you were employed by Tesco, an American company based in New York. You work online from home in Nigeria, and you are a member of the International Treasury of Tesco. So if you're in Treasury, this currency risk management is part of your role. Tesco supplies medical equipment to the USA and Europe. It also buys some basic raw materials from Europe. It is currently 30th November 2024. Sorry, I need to mute who is unmuted. Okay, please help us stay muted if you're not speaking with us, please. It is currently 30th November 2024. On 31st May 2025, Tesco is due to receive 16.3 CHF, which is Swiss franc really, from a Swiss customer, and also pay 4.0 million Swiss franc to a Swiss supplier. The exchange rates quoted as USD divided by Swiss franc. Annual interest rates available in Tesco. So you'd have interest rate given to you. Currency futures contract size, 125,000 futures price quoted as USD per CHF1. Futures price, so we have the futures price for December, March, and June. Currency options, contract size 125,000 Swiss franc, exercise price quoted USD per CHF1, premium is US cents. 1 Swiss franc. And then you would have options. So these are the options. We have the call as well as the put options. Required, advise Tesco showing relevant calculations. Which of the underlisted hedging strategies the company should adopt for its CHF or Swiss franc cash flows on 31st May 2025? Forward contracts, money market, traded futures, and traded options. In the case of options, assume the options are exercised. Any amount not hedged by a future or option contract will be hedged on the forward market. So that's our question in front of us. Tesco is an American company, and so they have a transaction with a Swiss customer, and basically they're going to use the Swiss franc. So they're concerned about adverse movement in exchange rate. And the key point is that Tesco right now is expecting a receipt and also expecting to make some payments. It's expecting to make a receipt from a Swiss customer. Is due to receive 6.4 million from a Swiss customer, and also has to pay 4.0 million to another, or maybe the same or another Swiss supplier as well. So they're concerned about how they protect themselves against adverse movement in exchange rate between the US dollar and the Swiss franc. So we're asked to help them do that or devise how to do that through a number of methods. So of all of these methods, the money market will not consider this because this has been moved to FM. So we're going to, for the purpose of our SFM, we're going to take these out of. So we're going to do the forward contracts, traded futures, and traded options. So that means that out of the 4 methods that we have for our ICANN exam, we would cover 3, and that leaves you with currency options. So if we do have some time to get another question that we can practice on that, we would ensure that is focused primarily on the currency swap, because this question will help us practice the forward, the futures, and the options. And that leaves us with just the last method. So let's get right into it, guys, please. Let's get right into it. Let's help Tesco. You as moving to Tesco, working from home as a treasury department to manage this exchange rate. So let's get right into it. Okay, so let's get into it, and that is Tesco. So the first one we're looking at is our forward rate agreement. Which is also called FRA. Okay, so let's spend just 2 minutes explaining what an FRA is, just 2 minutes or less, and then we come back to solve our question. So we just explain what FRA is and the steps we would take whenever we're trying to hedge with FRA. So FRA is very simple, it's pretty straightforward. It's basically an exchange rate agreed today with an FX dealer for the future. So a rate agreed today with an FX dealer for the future. So what we basically mean is you're trying to do a transaction in, say, 3 months' time. You don't want to wait until 3 months' time to go to the FX market to determine what the exchange rate is for the transaction. So you walk up to an exchange dealer or to an over-the-counter financial market and you say, guys, I have a transaction in 3 months' time. I don't want to wait on the 3 months' time. Can we agree on an exchange rate today for 3 months? for that transaction in 3 months, and you both enter into a contract and agree on a rate, that rate becomes a forward rate because it is not the rate now, but the rate that is agreed for the future. So when you have a question on forward rates, it's very important to do the following. One, you need to determine the amount you're trying to protect yourself against. So you need to determine how much are you trying to protect yourself against. That's the first thing. And oftentimes this would begin by netting off where required. So when we say net off where required, we're basically saying that if, for example, you are expecting to receive 10 million Swiss franc as a US customer, that's to keep it simple, and you have somebody to pay at the same time for, say, 2 million. The rational thing to do as a strategic financial manager is to first provide for these 2 million. So you tell yourself, okay, when I receive 10 million, out of this 10 million, I will take out 2 million, the same currency, Swiss franc. So you're not doing any exchange. You're not exchanging anything. I will take out 2 million from the 10 million and pay the party who I'm indebted to, and that would leave us with 8 million. And that is a part we would be concerned about how to manage. The same thing with payment. If you wanted to pay, for example, 10 million and you're receiving 8 million, or you're expecting to receive, say, 6 million, all you need to tell yourself is, okay, I wanted to pay 10 million, I'm expecting 6 million. So I already have 6 million out of the 10 million I want to pay. So what I need to be concerned about will just be the balance of 4 million. So that's what we mean by net off, where applicable. So if you have the both sides, then you then net off. So that's the first thing you need to determine. The second thing you need to determine is when is the payment due. That's the second thing you need to determine, the payment due date. So the payment due date. And the rates. Next thing you then need to determine would then be the applicable rate. So the reason why I said the rates here is because oftentimes in exam purpose, you're going to be given the rates to buy the foreign currency or the rate to sell. So you then need to determine what is the applicable rate based on what you're trying to do. So are you trying to sell the foreign currency or trying to buy it? So take, for example, if I receive $100 free money right now, and I'm a Nigerian, I want to sell it to get Naira, because Naira I would spend. But if I wanted to pay for, say, my ACC dues, I need to buy pounds, so I'm buying. So the rates is not going to be the same. So that's why you need to determine which of the rates is applicable, and that is based on the requirement. And it's always important to help you do that. You need to determine the quote system. So you need to determine, is it a direct quote or indirect quote? And then you then apply the rules based on the quote system. So you apply the rules based on the quote system, and then we can then convert. When we say convert, we're basically saying determine the equivalent in your local currency. So what is the Naira equivalent of that dollar? Or what is the Naira equivalent of that pound I want to buy? Or what is the Naira equivalent of the dollar I want to sell? So determine the value in your currency by converting. Okay, so these are 4 steps, but they're pretty straightforward. But it's just important to write it out so it gives you some form of methodical approach you could adopt for your solution. So you're not all over the place when you're trying to solve a question. So you know that these are the steps I'm taking to get this solved. So let's get right back to our question then and apply the steps quickly. So the first step is to determine the amount. How much are we trying to protect ourselves against? And if we have both receipt and payment, we begin by netting off. So let's go and determine how much is Tesco trying to protect itself against. Tesco is a US company. The customer is a Swiss franc. So they're trying to protect themselves against adverse movement in exchange rate between the US dollar and the Swiss franc. But how, by how amount? What amount? So let's go right in. It says right here, on May 2025, Tesco is due to receive 16.3 million from the Swiss franc and also to pay 4.30 million to a Swiss supplier. Like we explained, the logical thing to do is I'm expecting 16.3. I need to pay 4.0. So what will you do first? As you are collecting the 16.3, you need to make provision to pay 4.0. So that means that what amount are we left that we're really concerned about that we might be impacted by adverse movement? The payment we're making is the same currency, so it doesn't make any sense for you to convert the entire Swiss franc to dollar and then convert it again to pay. So just use the Swiss franc and make your payment. So let's determine the amount to be hedged. So you're expecting a receipt of 16.3 Swiss franc. But at the same time, you have a payment of 4.0. So that means that you have a net receipt that you need to worry about because that is the part you need to convert to the US dollar. And there's the risk that the exchange rate might move in a favorable condition between now and when that money is coming. So you have a net receipt of 12.3 Swiss francs. So this is what we're concerned about. This is what we need to manage. Okay, so now that we know what we're expecting and it's not coming now, so we go to an FX dealer and we tell an FX dealer, please, can we agree an exchange rate now for the future on our Swiss franc? And the FX dealer tells us, so this number 2 should be payment / receipt, depending on what you're trying to do. So if you're trying to make payment, that will be the payment due date. If you're expecting money, that will be the receipt due date, depending on what you're doing, what you're expecting. Okay. So you go to FX dealer, put this down, and you tell an FX dealer, can we agree an exchange rate now for the future? And FX dealer says, okay, no problem. In my market right now, I have maybe 3 rates really. 3 rates. I have the spot rate, which is the rate now. But that's not what we're interested in. We're interested in the rate for the future. The guy said, okay, I also have in my market or agreement for 3 months. In other words, a rate for an exchange in 3 months' time. I also have in my market a rate for an exchange in 6 months' time. So you need to ask yourself, okay, so when am I expecting this money to come in? Because that will determine the agreement you are going into. Clearly, you're not expecting money to come now. The spot is out of the way right now. But when do we need the money to come? So let's go back to our question and see when we need the money to come. So it says it is currently 30th November 2024. So that is now or today. On 31st May, Tesco is due to receive whatever it is. So from today to 31st May, today is 30th November 2024 to 31st May. When are we expecting to get that receipt? In how many months' time? Let me just write that quickly. To 30th May. So let's do that quickly. Thank you. So we're trying to look at the dates. So today is 30th November 2024, which is today. Expecting the receipts on 31st May 2025, which is the due date. So how many months from here to here? 6 months. That is November. So December 30, December, January, February, March, April, May. So that is in 6 months. So what you're interested in is to buy or go into an agreement for 6 months. You go back to the FX dealer and tell the guy, why am I always going on? I think my question is down. My question down or up? Okay, my question is down. Okay. So you go to the FX dealer and say, oh, what we're interested in, the forward rate agreement for 6 months. I'm not going to do it. We're not going to do the 3 months because our receipt is coming in 6 months' time. So we're going to go for we're not going to do 3 months because our receipt is coming in 6 months' time. So we're going to go for the 6 months. So the applicable FRA that contract that we go into would be the 6 months FRA. And the FX dealer tells you, okay, if that is the case, my 6 months FRA is priced at 1.0356 to 1.0378. 1.0356 to 1.0378. Okay, 1.0378. Okay, so that's what the FX dealer quotes for you. Now you need to note that of this price, one of them is the rate that the FX dealer would accept if you are the one that is buying from them. So if you're the one that is buying Swiss franc from them, that is the rate they would sell the Swiss franc to you. One of the value is the one that will apply if you are the one selling to them. So you could sell to the FX dealer, you could buy from the FX dealer. So one of these two rates would be applicable. So in our case, we are receiving Swiss franc. We are receiving, and we are Americans. We use the US dollar. So because we are receiving, we need to sell the Swiss franc to the FX dealer. So the FX dealer is going to buy the Swiss franc from us. So we need to know which of these rates is applicable. So how do we do that? Now, a couple of steps you need to take to do that. One is you need to know how the currency is quoted, because that is what will determine what you do. So we mentioned it when we did international investment appraisal. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time explaining this all over again because we're doing question practice. If you think you need to get a detailed explanation on how currency is quoted with variable and base, please do that. So I'll just explain the quote system quickly. If you think you missed that class or you need to, please go and watch that video. All right, so let me just explain the two quote approach briefly, but I'm not going to spend details into variable versus base explanation anymore, because we did that with international investment appraisal. So you need to bear in mind that if your currency is quoted exchange rate rather, if your exchange rate is quoted, your local currency is on top, and the foreign currency is below it, which is the base, it is referred to as a direct quote. And if your currency is quoted, your foreign currency on top, divided by your local currency below, it is an indirect quote. Now, very important is that you can always convert your indirect quote to direct quote. You can always convert your indirect quote to direct quote by using the formula 1 divided by your indirect quote. You can always do that conversion. So if, for example, your exchange rate turns out to be an indirect quote, you can quickly convert it to direct quote by just doing 1 over the exchange rate. So that will just help me to focus on the rules around here. And that's because I expect you to always convert to direct quote if it happens to be indirect quote by using 1 over the indirect quote method. So what is the rule? Which is pretty easy. As a businessman, how do you make money? You buy what and you sell what? How do you make money as a businessman regularly? If someone is into a business of selling cement, how do you make money? You buy what? You buy low and you sell what? Higher. And the difference becomes your profit. So the same thing applies for in the exchange rate market. If you're a businessman, you're into cement, maybe you buy I don't know how much cement is right now. So maybe you buy this, maybe you buy it at say 12,000, you sell it at say 12,500, so you make a profit of 500. That's what you typically do as a businessman. It's the same thing with an FX market. An FX market retailer would buy low and then they would sell high. Now, but that only applies with a direct quote system because that's the rule for a regular direct quote system. If it's indirect quote, once you convert it to direct quote, you can still apply the same rule. But if you choose not to convert it to direct quote, then you need to learn the rule for indirect quote, which is the opposite of what we would do with direct quote. But right now, the simpler method, if you want to, whenever you have indirect quote, just convert it to direct quote and make use of the direct quote rule. So let's go right into it now. So that's what every seller, or every market, every person will do. That's what we do to make money. So let's go back now to our question quickly and just get that done. So the first thing we need to determine is how is our currency quoted? And then we then apply the rule. So if our currency is quoted, our local currency is on top and the foreign currency is below, we know it's a direct quote. So we'll just apply the rule straight up. And the rule is the FX dealer will buy low and sell high. However, if the currency is indirect quote, we can choose to convert that currency to the direct quote by just doing 1 over the indirect quote, and then we then apply the rule. But if you choose not to convert, indirect quote rule will be the opposite of direct quote. The easier method is to convert because that means that you get to just know the rules of direct quote. All right, so let's get right back to our question and determine how is that currency quoted. Is it quoted direct quote or is quoted indirect quote? And that is based on how it's written here. So let's go right back to our question quickly. How is our exchange rate quoted? Okay, so our exchange rate, which is this, is quoted US dollar divided by Swiss franc. So which of these currency is our own local currency as a company that is doing this transaction, and which of these is foreign to us? So we are doing this hedging or this protection for Tesco. So wherever Tesco is based, that is our local currency. So where is Tesco based? Where is Tesco based? Tesco is an American company. So the US dollar is our own local currency because we're in America. So that is our local currency. The CS franc is foreign to us because that is not our currency. It is foreign to us. It's a foreign exchange to us. So that means that our exchange rate is quoted local over foreign. And if an exchange rate is quoted local over foreign, what quote system is that? If it is quoted local over foreign, it is a direct quote. It is a direct. So we just apply the rules. And so what is the rule? The FX dealer, if we are buying, the FX dealer will sell to us at a high rate. But if we are selling to them, they will buy from us at a low rate. So what I mean here is the FX dealer. So what are we trying to do? We are a US company. We receive Swiss franc. Swiss franc is not our currency. So we need to take it to the FX dealer and sell it to the FX dealer. And then the FX dealer will buy that from us. And if the FX dealer is buying from us, between the low and the high one, which one is applicable, guys? The FX dealer is buying your Swiss franc from you. Will they buy from you at a low rate or a high rate? They'll buy from you at a low rate because they need to sell to someone else at a high rate to make a profit. So they're going to buy it from you at a low rate and sell it to someone else at a higher rate. So the applicable rate would be the low rate. So let's go back to our question. So which of the two quotes, which of the two values there is our low rate? Which of them is our low rate? Okay. Yeah, so this is our low rate, 1.0356. So the agreed amount, which is the forward, value is 1.0356 on 12.3 million Swiss franc. So what do we have? It's my calculator. 1.0356 multiplied by 12.3 million. So that gives us the US dollar equivalent of that amount of 12,737,880. Pretty straightforward. So that's our forward rate agreement. So once you follow the steps, you will never go wrong out of it. So let's do a quick recap of the steps again. One is you need to determine the amount to be hedged. If it's just a single amount, it's that amount. But if you have payment and receipt, you need to net off, because the logical thing to do if you have a receipt and you need to make payment is provide for the payment, and then you're concerned about just the balance. And if you have payment and then you have small little bit of receipt, take the receipt to net off the payment, and you're concerned about just the difference. So once you've done that, you can then go to the FRA market and determine what is the right FRA rate. So the FRA you buy will depend on when you need to make that payment or the receipt. And we explain that here, in 6 months. And then once you see that it's due in 6 months, you can clearly see the rates from the question. So once you have that, the FX dealer is always going to give you two rates, but it's not going to tell you which is which. So once you have that, what you do depend on, so which the rates that are applicable would depend on what you're trying to do. But always bear in mind that an FX dealer is into business like every other businessman. And every businessman out there would buy what they are selling at a low price, then they will sell it to someone else at a higher price. But that basically works if it's a direct quote system. So you need to confirm that your exchange rate is direct quote. And if it's not a direct quote, just convert it to direct quote. If you choose not to convert it to direct quote, then you need to apply the rules for indirect quote. And the rules for indirect quote just works opposite of direct quote. So what we mean by that is, instead of it, if you are not converting it and it's an indirect quote, instead of you picking the lower one, you'll be picking the higher one, because the indirect quote works the opposite way. But the easier method is, if it's a direct quote, indirect quote, just convert it to direct quote and just use the direct quote rule. So that way you only get to know what direct quote rule is. And how do you convert? If it is an indirect quote, 1 divided by the exchange, the indirect quote rate. But for our question, it's a direct quote. So we need to sell, and the FX dealer is buying from us. So they buy from us at the lower of the two rates because they're into business. So they're going to buy low and sell high. Just like you go into there, you want to sell a phone or something. Whoever is buying it from you in the Ikeja is going to buy it at a lower price because they need to sell it to someone else to make a profit. And when the guy that wants to buy from them comes, they sell it to the guy at a much higher rate. Any question on FRA? Because we're leaving FRA. So what I expect you guys to do now, okay, I have another question on the YouTube. You can just go there and practice with that. Then that will solidify your knowledge. Okay, Lola said you can't see the board. I guess it's a network. So maybe you can just quickly log off and log back in. Okay, so that's our first method. Let's move on to our second method, which is futures. Okay, so let's spend a few minutes, just like we did with forwards, to explain what futures are and the steps you would take. So once you stick to the steps of FRA, you can't go wrong. So let's do the same thing for futures quickly in very few minutes as well. Okay, so futures are standardized FX markets. So standardized FX markets. So in forward, it could just be a private arrangement between Mr. A and Mr. B, or between an individual and a bank. It's just an over-the-counter transaction. But in forwards, you have standardized, dedicated FX market. And in Nigeria, you have FMDQ, for example. FMDQ, for example, as a standardized FX market, and they deal in currency futures, options, and then they also do a little bit of forwards as well. So if you're interested in a role in Treasury, you should be maybe regularly visiting FMDQ website and familiarize yourself with what happens with that market, because they are standardized FX markets. And because they are standardized markets, there are certain principles and rules that are applicable to it. And what are some of these rules? One is that the contracts in the futures markets are sold in blocks. So for example, they might be selling their contract in, say, blocks of 50K. So what that basically means for you is, if you are trying to manage 100K, that's pretty easy. That's 2 blocks, because each block is 50K, so that's pretty easy. But if you are trying to manage, say, for example, 105K, because they are sold in blocks of 50K, you can't buy 105K worth of protection. So it's either you buy 2 blocks, which is 100K, and then the balance of 5K, you can decide to protect yourself against that by using forward or any other method. Because they are sold in blocks. And that is the reason why you would find in our question right here, it clearly mentions in our question. This is my question. So that's why you could find in our question. Where's that? No. We read it somewhere. Read it somewhere about how to manage the balance. So I think, is it down? Okay, let's look at the requirement quickly. I think we read that one, we read the question. Okay, in the note. That's why you find here in the note, any amount not hedged by a future or option contract will be hedged on the forward market. And I've tell you've seen why. That's because it is sold in blocks. It's possible that the exact amount you have, you can't buy the exact amount because they are sold in blocks. So the part you can't buy, you need to look for a way to get it out. You need to do for you to protect yourself through another method, because you have to buy them in those blocks. So that's one key. Was that writing? Oops, I was writing here. Wow. Okay. So that's one features of one feature or one of the conditions or features of a futures market. The second characteristic of futures quickly is that they have a fixed maturity date. So you are going to buy a futures market, goes to the market, and they will tell you our futures are due mature in March, in June, in December, in whatever it is. So they have those fixed dates. So what that means is that if, for example, you want to do a transaction in February, don't forget that because it's stabilized market, the futures is meant to mature in March. So what that means is that if you are doing your transaction before when it's due to mature, you need to make an adjustment to the price. So if you are closing before the due date, you need to make some adjustment to the price. Okay, and that talks about the concept of basis and basis risks. Okay, so we're not going into that right now. Okay, and then finally, very important is that futures are settled in net. All right, so those are the key, what do you call it? The key elements of a futures contract. I wanted to just spend a few minutes on that because this is a question practice session. So let's go right now to the steps quickly. One, just like we had in forward, you need to determine the amount. What amount are you interested in hedging or protecting yourself against adverse movement? So you need to determine the amount. So net amount, if applicable, just like we had in forward. So if you have a payment and receipt, you need to first begin by netting it off. Second thing you need to do is to determine the due date. The due date for your receipt. So let's call it net receipt, just in case you're netting off. So for your net receipt slash payment. The third thing you need to do once you've done that is to determine the futures date. So what futures are you buying? In forward contract, because it's a privately negotiated contract, you would always get for the specific date that you need it. So I need to make the payment in June. In 6 months' time, I get it for 6 months' time. I need to make the payment in 3 months' time, I get it for 3 months' time, because they are privately negotiated. Mr. A and Mr. B with an agreement. But for futures, like I mentioned, they are standardized contracts, so they have a fixed maturity date. So you won't get the futures that is, you might not, let me not say you will not, you might not get the futures that would be on the exact same date that you need to make the payment or you need to make the receipt. So which of them would you buy? And the futures you would buy would be futures that you go into a contract with would be the one that matures on the date you need to consummate the transaction or immediately after. So one that matures on the date you need to consummate the transaction. And so what I basically mean is, if I need to consummate my transaction on June 30th, for example, and I have a future that's maturing on June 30th, that is the futures I would buy. But if I don't have a futures that is maturing on June 30th, I'm going to buy the future that is maturing, the next one that is maturing after that date. So if the next one is maturing after that date matures in July, that is the one we would buy. So it has to be the one that's maturing the date or the next available one. So that's pretty straightforward. You need to determine the number of contracts, because futures are sold in blocks. You need to determine the number of contracts. And the amount to be hedged through other methods, if available. And the amount to be hedged with other methods. So what I mean by that is, coming back to this my example, if we wanted to protect ourselves with against adverse movement in 105K, now futures is in block of 50K. So we can only buy 2 blocks, which is because 2 blocks gives us 100K. So that is the amount, number of blocks. However, we have 5K that we can't hedge with futures because our futures is in blocks of 5,000. So we need to determine what is that other amount that we cannot hedge with futures, so that we can then hedge it with that other method. So that's our step 4. Futures is a standardized market, and for every standardized market, including markets such as the stock exchange, you need to have a strategy. So you need to establish what is your hedging strategy. I'm going to explain this when I get to this in our solution. And our strategy would either be a long position, which is buy now, sell later when we're closing to make money, or a short position. Which is sell now, buy later. We mentioned that futures have a fixed maturity date because they're standardized contract. So if, for example, you buy a contract that is maturing in June, but you need to make your payment or your receipt in April,
that means you're not holding it until when it matures. If you're holding it until when it matures, it's pretty straightforward. When it matures, you consummate your transaction. But if you are consummating it before when it matures, you need to determine what is the range, which is referred to as basis. What is the range between now and the futures price? And then you need to compute the range, which is basically what is the difference between the price now, which is the spot price, as well as the futures price. We then need to determine, because we're making an adjustment for the price. So this step 6 is basically adjustment for the price where you are not holding it up to maturity. So you enter into a contract and it's meant to mature in March at a specific price, but you're not holding that futures up to March. So you need to make an adjustment for the price. And to make an adjustment for the price, we determine what is the price range, which is the difference between the spot price and the futures price. We then determine what is the remaining basis, which is the unused period. Which is the unused period. And then we can then adjust for that unused period. Adjust for the unused period, which would basically be, so there are different methods of computing this, but both would arrive at the same answer. So that would basically be your futures price plus the remaining basis. And that adjustment is also referred to as your lock-in rate. It's called your lock-in rate because that is the final price after you've adjusted for the period that you will not hold on to that contract to. And then with that, we can then do our final step, which is to determine the equivalent in your local currency. So determine the equivalent in your local currency. Okay, so that's a 7-step process. Some of these steps we can actually write them by reading. That's a 7-step process for hedging an exchange rate using our futures. So with that said, let's get right into applying these steps quickly with the question in front of us. So let's get back to our question. So the first thing we determine is we even need to know what is the amount. What amount are we really concerned about? And we're not going to do that all over again because we computed that in the forward. So what is the amount? What was the amount that we're interested in after we net off?
12.3.
12.3. So we're not going to do that again. So if you missed that part of the class, please you go rewatch the video. So that is the amount we're interested in, which is 12.3. So that is the amount. So let's put our futures here. So our amount is 12.3 million Swiss franc. That is the amount. So I'll just be going up and back so that we can, so we stick to the step. Since these are the steps I wrote down, that we're consistent with the steps. So that's the first thing, we know what the amount is. So we go to an effect we then look at our transaction and say, okay, so when do we need to make this payment or receipt? In our case, the net receipt. We did that with FRA, so we're not going to do that again. So when do we need to do this?
6 months.
6 months.
6 months time. And 6 months happens to end when? Let's look at our question. 6 months happens to
31st
end.
July.
Okay, so let's check that. Let's confirm that. We said it's in 6 months, and it happens to be when? 6 months happens to be on the 31st of May 2025. So we already have those 2 steps before. So we're not going, if you think you need to, please watch the videos on FRA to look at how we got those values. We're not going to go back to that anymore. So the due date, which we computed in FRA and explained on the FRA, is 6 months, which ends on 31st May. Okay, so let me quickly check if I have a hand. Okay, Sophia, your hand is up.
Yes, sir. Good evening, sir.
Yeah, good day.
Sir, please, I want to confirm. This is 12.3. Is it this 12.3 that we are about to hedge?
Yeah, but we're doing another method. So the first method is FRA. So we mentioned that there are different methods. So we're comparing the different methods to then advise which of them is the most valuable one or the most advantageous one to Tesco. So it's all the same amount, but different methods. Is that clear?
Okay.
Yeah, so the first method we try to do is FRA, and we arrive at the net amount of 12,737,880. But there are different methods. So we're looking at all of the different methods for that same amount. And then at the end of the day, we'll now look at what it turns out to and advise our company which of the methods they should go for. Hope that's clear. So it's the same thing. Just that different methods are different markets and different approaches. Okay.
So this 12.3, are you receiving it or are we paying it?
We're receiving it now.
I've explained it before now. You were expecting okay, maybe you want to take me back one more time. I can do that quickly one more time, but I think you should watch the video if you missed that because we explained it when we did FRA. So we don't go back every single time anybody's coming back. So if you got it when we did forward, then, or if you didn't get when we did forward, you ask when we did forward so that it's easy for us to move forward. So you are expecting, what are you expecting from the question? You are expecting, where's my question?
16.3.
You are expecting, where's my
16.3.
You are expecting to receive, you are expecting to receive 16.3. Or you have a 4.0 payment to make. So when you take off the payment, you still have a net receipt of 12.3. Okay, so please, we explained it. Yeah, we explained it in forward so that we don't go back every single time. So if there are any question when we do a method, please ask so that we can save on time. All right, so let's get right back to our question. And if you missed it, you can always go and catch up on the video when it's available. Okay, so now we've determined, because we have it in our FRA, the amount will determine what the due date is. The next thing is to determine which futures do we buy. Forward is easy. 6 months, we're going to find 6 months because it's a privately negotiated contract. But futures have standardized maturity date, meaning that the day you need to do the transaction, or you might not have a futures maturing on that exact date. So what one are we going to buy? We're going to buy one that matures on the date you need to consummate the transaction. And if you don't have one that matures on that date, the next available one. So let's begin with, when do we need to do our transaction? We need to do our transaction on when? In 6 months' time, which is 31st May. So let's go and see if we have any futures that's maturing on 31st May. If we don't have, then we'll buy the next available one. So let's go to our question. We're going to the futures market. So these are the futures market. Do we have anyone that's maturing on 31st May?
No.
So our futures are maturing in December, in March, and in June. We don't have a future that's maturing on 31st May. So because we don't have futures maturing on 31st May, we buy the next available one. So which is the next available one?
The June.
June.
So our futures we're going to buy is the June futures, and that has a price of 1.0369. Oh, sorry, my solution is up. I'm always moving down. I think next time I'll do my solution down. Naturally, my mind goes to down after the question. So my futures date or the applicable futures is the June with a price of 1.0369. Okay, so that's our June futures. Next step, we're interested in, now that we know what futures to buy, to determine the number of contracts, because futures are in blocks. It's not like forward. In forward, I need 12.3. I can get 12.3 on the dot. But in futures, they are sold in block. So you might not get the exact amount that you need. We need to protect ourselves against 12.3 million Swiss francs. We might not be able to get the exact amount, depending on what if the block gives us the round amount. And if not, we need to hedge the other one through another method. So let's determine the number of contracts. If we're able to hedge everything directly, good for us. If not, we just buy the part that we can buy, and we hedge the other one through other method. And for other method, the question says we should use forwards. That's lucky for us because there's money market hedge, and money market is FM. So if it had said we should use money market hedge, maybe we would have changed it to forward ourselves or something. So we need to determine the number of contracts. And amount for other methods, and remaining amount or something. Okay, so to determine the number of contracts, all we need to do is to say what is the amount required divided by the contract size or the block size that is sell it. So that is amount required divided by the contract size. If we get a whole number, that means we're able to hedge everything. If we have a decimal, it means that the fractional part, we need to get it through another method. So we need 12.3 million Swiss franc. That's what we need to hedge against. And we go to the FX dealer, and FX dealer says, I sell my futures in blocks of how much? Of the futures contract sizes in blocks of how much? With our futures, let's go to our futures.
125.
Contract size, 125,000 Swiss francs. So those are in blocks of 125,000. So how many contracts would that be? 125. 98 point what?
0.4.
Okay, just a moment. Let me just double check. Okay, it doesn't really matter. Okay, so 98.4. We cannot buy a 0.4 because they're sold in blocks of 125. So how much are we going to buy? We're going to buy 98.
98.
Because they're sold in blocks of 128. So let's now determine the amount that we are not able to protect ourselves. And then we can then protect ourselves using forward, because the question says that any amount that we cannot protect ourselves with using futures, we're going to use forward for that. So let's determine the amount that we can protect ourselves for quickly first. So total amount. So the total amount we're looking at is 12,300. The futures that we can protect ourselves against is 98 blocks, and each block is 125,000. So how much are we using futures for, so that we know what is remaining?
12,250,000.
Okay, so that is 12,250,000. So we have a difference of 50,000. And the question mentions that any amount that we cannot hedge using futures because it's sold in blocks, we should hedge that amount using what? Forward market. Any amount not hedged by a futures or option contract will be hedged on the forward market. So the balance of 50,000, we're going to hedge it with forward. We're going to come to that when we finish with our futures computation. We just determine we just go to the forward market and determine what the equivalent for that 50,000 is. We just add it and get our total value. So for now, just note that we are only going to hedge 12,250 with forward, and we're going to hedge this 50,000. With futures, 12,250 with futures, and we're going to hedge this 50,000 with forwards. So I'm going to come back to that 50,000 when I'm putting my solution together. Once I'm done with the futures, I'll just add what the forward equipped value is, and that gives me my total. Okay, so let me pause a bit quickly. If there are any question on the number of contracts, Adetunji, please go ahead, please.
Okay, good afternoon, sir.
Yeah, good day.
Hello, good afternoon, sir.
Yeah, good afternoon. I can hear you. Please go ahead. I can hear you. Please go ahead.
Okay, so my question is, I have a question on that forward rate, but I also have a question on this future rate. My question is, I'm kind of being confused. I don't know if you can just come back again for last time on this contract size. This contract size, like how to really determine this contract size, is kind of being confused somehow. I know that we are giving that one to the in the question, but how to use them or how to determine it is kind of confusing to me. I don't know if you can just last time.
So I have a formula here. Can you see the formula? Amount required divided by contract size. So it's as easy as that. If I tell you that I am selling something in blocks of 50 and you have 100 naira, how many are you buying? It's just 100 divided by 50, which is 2. It's as simple as that. I'm telling you that I'm selling something in 50-50 and you want to buy 100 naira what? How many are you buying? How many do you think you're buying? You're buying 100 divided by 50, which is 2. So the same thing. How much do you want? What the number of the blocks that in how many blocks? Now, if you have 105 and I'm selling in 50, can you buy 105 what? I'm selling in 50 each. Can you buy 105 what from me?
No.
You can't. So you just buy the one that your money can take, which is 200. Then your balance of 5K, you decide whatever you want to do with it. So it's the same thing we just did here. We need 12.3 and it's being sold in blocks of 125. So we divide the amount divided by the contract size. If there's any fraction, it tells us that it's not a whole number. So that fractional part is not up to 1. So we just look at, okay, so what's the value of the one we can buy from this market? And then what is the balance?
Can we approximate? Can we approximate? If at even this point we have 98.9, can we convert to 99?
Why do you want to convert to 99? It's in blocks of 125,000. Okay, let me help you out now.
This 98.
Just hold on. You're just complicating things. 99. Just hold on. You're complicating. It's very simple now. It's normal transaction. If you go to the market and you have 140 naira, and somebody tells you I am selling my stuff at 50 naira each. So 105 naira, 140 divided by 50, what is that? 140 divided by 50. That's 2.8. That's 2.8.
That's
Can you
2.8.
come out from that market with 3 of those items? Can you come out from that market with 3? You want to buy a phone, and the guy is telling you, let's keep it simple. The guy is telling you, I'm selling my phone at 50 naira each, and you have 140. Can you come out of that market with 3 phones?
I can't price now.
We are not about pricing now. This is standardized market. This is standardized market, not who should the market. This is standardized market. This is standardized market. You go to a supermarket. They wrote 140.
Okay.
And you they wrote 50 naira. And you have 140. Can you come out of it with 3?
No.
Can you? So it's as simple as that. It's a standardized market. It's sold in blocks. So you can't round up because it's standardized market. Sir. Okay, can someone else confirm you can hear me? Because if you can't hear me, I don't think it's at my end.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, so it's not at my end. I'm very sure it's not at my end. So you can't come out, you can't round up because it's standardized market. You can't come out of the market with 3 because the guy is selling his stuff in blocks of that amount. Hope we can move forward. Hope that's clear. We can move forward.
Does someone hear
One last
him?
question.
Okay, go ahead.
This all these forward rates, like I'm thinking that because when you are buying, but we are receiving that money, that 12,300,000. I know that when we receive that money, we are selling to the over the counter. And if you are selling, we are selling so that we can have a gain. So I think
you are selling
when we
as
are
what?
selling,
You are selling as what? You are selling as your uncle gives you $100. You want to go and sell. You are selling to get as what? It's not you that wants to make a gain now. It's the FX dealer that wants to make a gain from you now. So they'll buy from you at the low price and sell it to someone else at the high price and make money. Your uncle gives you $100 now. You go to the bank to sell it. You are selling to collect your naira and move on. The FX dealer is the one that wants to make profit from that $100. So they'll buy it from you at the low price and sell it at the high price and make money. Okay.
So we sell low, we buy higher.
You don't sell low. The FX dealer is the one that is buying from you. You are not the one. You are the one. The FX. Yeah, it's a mark. It's the FX dealer is buying from you. So you're selling is the one that is buying from you. So it's the one that is buying from you at a low price, so that they can sell it at a high price to make profit. So let me ask you a question. If you're a phone dealer now, because phone it's a market transaction now. If you are a phone dealer now and somebody brings phone to come and sell to you, would you buy the phone from the guy at a very high price, or you look at buying it at a low price and selling it high? What would you do?
Those phone people are very wicked, though. They will not buy it at a very good price, though.
So the same thing. It's the same thing we're saying. The same thing we're saying now. So they'll buy it from you at a low price and sell it at a high price so they can make a profit. So it's the exact same thing we're saying. It's like every other business. It's like every other business. As long as you're selling to somebody, the person that is buying from you wants to buy it at a cheap price so that they can sell it at a higher price and make money. Is that clear?
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
All right. Okay. So it's like it's every other market. So don't complicate things for yourself. Just think of yourself like a businessman. It's like every other market out there. So FX, fixed currency risk management, interest rate is very easy. It's like every other market. Where students get it wrong is because they overthink it. They try to complicate things for themselves. Once you follow the methods and the approach, it's like every other market out there. So you just need to determine who is doing what. Once you know who is doing what, it's easy for you to put yourself into the shoe of a businessman out there and what a businessman will naturally do. Okay? Okay. So let's, if anyone you want to quickly ask a question, you can go ahead before we move forward.
Okay, so please, I wanted to find out this method we did now, is it the same thing as a currency swap?
I guess you missed the beginning of my class then. So I think I'll refer you back to the video so we won't go back every single time. I mentioned at the very start of my lectures, when I listed it, that we have 4 methods. I listed it right here. I said we have 4 methods. And one of the methods is currency swap. And one of the methods is currency swap. We don't have currency swap in our quiz. So all we have is forward rate, which is the one we solved first, and futures, which is the second one we are solving. Currency swap is a completely different method, and I explained it at the start of the class.
Okay, no, I understand now. I understand now.
Yeah, maybe you missed that. Okay. All right. So let's get right back to our solution then. Okay, so let's take one more step and then we can take more questions after that so that we can make some progress. Because I really want to get done with this today if we have the time, rounding up in 30 minutes of time or less. So now we've determined this, we now need to determine the hedging strategy, which is our step 5. We need to determine the hedging strategy. Now, the hedging strategy is the same thing for those that I don't want to spend too much time on this. It's a question practice session, but I'll just take a minute or two to explain that hedging strategy because it's the same strategy that applies for the stock market as well. So that is our hedging strategy. If you invest in the stock market or you have some passion to review the stock market, you notice that there are 2 ways of making money in the stock market. But many people many people are not financially literate, only think that when you want to make money in the stock market, it is just a one-way thing. When I say a one-way thing, I mean it's only a long position. A long position is you buy low, you sell high. So when the stock market is increasing, the stock price are increasing, which is the same thing as the futures market, you buy that, say, maybe you buy a GTP share that say 150 naira. When it increases to 200 naira, you sell, you make a profit of 50 naira. That is what most people know. And so that is why when the stock price is reducing from 150 naira to say 100 naira to 60 naira, they panically sell and go out and they lose money, not realizing that you can make money when the market is going up and also make money when the market is going down. Now, when you make money when the market is going down, that is called a short position. When you're making money when the market is going up, that is called a long position. So I'll let you guys, it's outside the scope of what I want to treat here. This is risk management. But I just wanted to point out that you can make money when the market is going up, or you can make money when the market is going down. So that becomes a long and a short position. Now let's bring it into risk management, into currency risk management. If you are buying now, so I need to make a payment, so I am buying FX. The approach to make money in the currency market is a long position. But if you are selling now, the strategy to make money in the currency market is a short position. So I'm going to leave it at this way for the purpose of this question practice. But if you need more and you're really interested in treasury and are you really interested in treasury and investment, we can have a different conversation on the private chat. For the purpose of the exam, I'm going to leave it for what you need for the purpose of your exams. So if you, as a dealer in the currency market, are interested in buying FX now, you're taking a long position with the direct quote system. If you're interested in selling now, you're taking a short position with the direct quote system. All right, so let's see, what are we trying to do? What are we trying to do in this quiz? So what is Tesco trying to do? Are they trying to buy a foreign currency or they're trying to sell a foreign currency? Tesco has received a net of 12.3 Swiss franc. That is not their currency. So because it is not their currency, they need to sell it. So the applicable strategy to make money in this market for Tesco would be to adopt a short position. So I could just note that down. We can say, let me not use because not a very good way to start a sentence. So we can say that as Tesco is receiving a foreign currency, and it's a direct quote. The applicable strategy applicable hedging strategy. Applicable hedging strategy is a short position. The short position basically works by selling the futures now and buying it back in future to make a profit. But right now, the purpose of this step is just to highlight what strategy should we adopt for our hedging. And that would be a short position. That's because we are selling the foreign currency and our quote system is a direct quote. All right, let's see any question on our hedging strategy. So if that's something you're really interested in, investments, we can have a conversation outside of this class. But for the purpose of our exams, you just need to know what the strategy is and write it down appropriately. And I've noted what the strategy is and how to determine what the strategy is. So generally in the stock market or even any other transaction market, people that are not financially literate lose money because that the only thing that you make money in the long position. So when the price is increasing, you think that is when you make money. So when the price is reducing, they quickly sell and they go out, not realizing that you can also make money adopting a short position, which is the strategy you have when you are selling or the price is going down. But that's not the scope of this part of our class right now. All right, so that's our hedging strategy quickly. So that's pretty straightforward. You're buying a foreign currency, the quote is direct quote, it's a long position. You're selling, it's a direct quote, it's a short position. Okay, so that's our step. What's that? Step what? A, B, C, D, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, that's our step 5. So we have just 2 quick more steps to go, which is our determining adjustment for the price, and then we convert. Now, step 6 is an adjustment for the price. Now, step 6 is optional. So I mentioned it's optional because if the futures is maturing on the exact same date that we are meant to do the transaction, then we don't need to adjust for the price at all. So I buy a future that's maturing on June 30th, and it's June 30th that I'm meant to consummate the transaction. There's no need for adjustment. But if we buy a futures on a date that is different from the date that we meant to consummate the transaction, then we need to make an adjustment for it. So let me explain that part quickly with maybe just a quick line that shows where we are. So we're talking about adjustment of the adjustment to the futures price. Adjustment to the futures price. So this is what we mean. So let me just draw a quick line to explain that. So today, what is today? In our question, what is today? I think what the day we're trying to make this decision. What
November
is today?
November
30th.
2024.
November
Yeah.
30th.
November 30th.
30th, yeah, 30th November 2024. So that's today. So today is 30th November 2024. Our futures that we bought is maturing when? It's maturing June.
May.
No, the futures we bought, not when we want to consummate it. The futures that we
June.
bought.
Okay.
Yeah, because the
June.
futures have standardized date. They have specific dates that they mature. So we bought the one that's maturing on June at 1.0369. So at 1.0369. If our transaction, which is the day we need to receive the money, was on June 30th on the dot, if it was on June 30th on the dot, we will not need to make any adjustment to the price because the price of 1.0369 is the price on June 30th. But we are not going to hold it until June 30th. And that's because we are receiving the money before June 30th. When are we receiving the money? When are we receiving the money?
May 31st.
We are receiving the money May 31st. So we are receiving the money May 31st. So we need to adjust for this portion. So we need to adjust for the unused part. We need to adjust the price. We need to adjust the price for the unused part because of that difference. So let's do that quickly. So first thing first, what is the difference between the price now and the price on June 30th? That is what is referred to as basis. What is the difference between the price now, which is the spot rate, minus the futures? So the futures is 1.0369. So what is the price now? The price now is the spot rate. The price now is the spot rate. So what is our spot rate? We agreed that is the lower rate that is applicable for our transaction. We agreed that is the lower rate. So we don't need to explain that again, because we agreed that because you're selling, the FX dealer is going to buy from you at a lower rate. So what is our rate now? The lower one. So our spot rate is the price now. It is price now, and we've agreed that it's the lower one that is applicable because we are selling to the FX dealer. So just like we use the lower one here, we're going to use the lower one here. So that's 1.0292. 1.0292. $1.0292. Okay, so what is the movement from here, which is the price now, to here? What's the difference in the prices? 1.0292 minus 1.0369. What's the difference? Minus 0. What? 0.77. That is the difference between now and 6 months. So this difference is for a period of 6 months, because the difference between now and when it matures is 6 months. Out of these 6 months, how many months are we not using? In other words, how many months would we not need to hold it for?
1 month.
1 month, which is between May and June. So our remaining basis, which is the unused part, would be the unused month divided by the total month, or the duration, multiplied by the basis. Okay, so the unused month, or the period that we don't need it for, is between May and June, which is 1 month. Out of a total of how many months?
6 months.
6 months. Out of a total of 6 months, which is from November to June. Is that 6 months or 7 months? Let's check that again. November, December, January, February, March, April, May, June. Total of 7 months, guys, not 6 months. So this is November. So December, January, February, March, April, May, June. So that's 7 months, guys, not 6 months. I think 7 months from now. Not 7 months. So this is total of 7 months. 6 months is from today to when we need to consume it. But 7 months from now to the maturity of the futures itself. So that is 7 months. Okay. So 1/7 multiplied by minus 0.0077. So what is the remaining, the unused part that we need to make? We need to adjust our futures price for. 1 divided by 7 multiplied by minus 0.0077. So what do we have? Minus 0.0011. So this is the unused part. Unused part, what is called the remaining basis, what is also called the unutilized basis. So now let's adjust the futures price for the unused one. So the adjusted price which is also referred to as the lock-in rate would then be the futures price, which is the amount that we would have applied if we were doing a transaction on that exact same date. But because we're not doing our price on our transaction on that exact same date of June 30th, but we're doing a transaction on May 31st, we need to adjust it for the unused part. So that would be our futures price is 1.0369 plus minus 0.010011. Plus minus becomes minus. So what is our adjusted rate now? Plus minus becomes minus. So that is 1.0369 minus 0.0011. That gives us a lock-in rate of 1.0358. So this becomes our final rate or final adjusted rate. So let me pause and take questions, because I know that we had to come through a number of steps. So maybe I can just take a minute to explain it again one more time quickly, and then I can then take questions after that. The only reason why we are doing this adjustment, is because our transaction comes before the future matures. The futures is meant to mature on June at 1.0369. So if we're doing our transaction on June 30th on the dot, we don't need to make any adjustment because that is the price for June 30th. But because we're not doing our transaction on June 30th, we're doing a transaction earlier, we need to adjust for the unused part of the price. We need to adjust for the unused part of the price. And how do we adjust for the used part of the price? First thing first, we ask ourselves, what is the difference between now in price, between now and when our futures will mature? And that is what we refer to as basis. So between now and when our price will mature, the difference is 0.077. And that covers the period of 7 months. But we're not going to wait for 7 months. We're only going to wait for 6 months, meaning that we have 1 month that we don't need out of the 7 months. So we need to adjust or determine the value of that 1 month so that we can adjust our price for that 1 month. So that means that out of the 7 months, we would not need 1 month. So 1/7 out of the total, which is it gives us 0.0011. So with that, we can then adjust our price for this 1 month, which is unused part. And that is basically your futures price plus the unused part. So that would basically, because this is minus, it automatically changes to minus. So that would be 1.06 plus minus. So that automatically changes to minus. And that gives you 1.0358 as our final rate. So with that, we can then do our conversion to determine what our value is in futures. But let me take question first before I take that conversion part, that part on conversion. Sophia, please go ahead quickly.
Yes, sir. Sir, please, I want to confirm. This date, this 31st December, I will still counting it. I think that the date have already ended.
I didn't put 31st December. I put 31st December. I didn't put 31st December.
November. 31st November. I was thinking I will start counting in December to make it 6 months.
No, now
so
December to
31st,
June is 7 months.
Count it now. So 31st December, November to December. December 1 month, January 2 months, February 3 months, March 4 months,
May was wild, so
April 5 months, May 6 months, June 7 months.
Oh.
Can you count? That? So December, January, February, March, April, May, June. That's 7 months.
Okay. Now the next question is that based on that, this our knocking rate. This the sign of plus or minus, is it because we are receiving that we are having plus?
The formula is the futures price plus the remaining basis. But because our value here is minus, that changes this plus because plus minus 0.00111. So plus minus changes it to minus. This is our locking rate. Our locking rate is minus 0.0011. Our formula is the futures price plus. But because this is minus, it changes this to minus because plus minus is minus.
Okay.
Okay, so let's see what else so that we can just quickly round it up. Okay, thank you. Okay. Okay, so I think we appear to all be good then. Any other question? Let me check my chat, see if there are any questions.
Hello, sir. I'm seeing my hand.
I don't see any other hand up. Maybe I check it again. It's not showing quickly, so I need to round up this. Your hand is still not up, but you can go ahead. You can go ahead, please. We need to round up this. You can go ahead, please. We need to round up this. You can go ahead, please.
Okay, thank you so much. Like, it's still going smoothly. But my question is, now this is in the case whereby the future is less than maturity. I understand that now. But what if the future is behind the maturity? Maybe the future is that June, and maturity we can find on the future market is 6 months, is May. Are you going to do the same thing like this?
I don't get your question. Sorry, can I take that again?
Okay. My question is, in this question, our maturity day on the future market is June.
Okay.
But our 6 months, their payment day is May, which that we have 1 month interval before the maturity. So my question is now that what if the maturity, the future market, the maturity is now June, but our payment date is is now May, but our payment day is July. Maybe there's another 1 month difference before the payment date. The maturity is May, but the future is June. Are we going to go through this process like this?
You're saying now, what we did is say now, your payment is May, futures is June. It's the we've done as you're saying. So maybe you rephrase your question.
It's not the same thing. It's not the same thing. I'm trying to make it looking like that future market will be behind the payment date.
And so
our
give,
6
so give
months
me
is May.
Give me, So your futures is when? So futures cannot be June. So are you saying futures in April? Are you saying futures is in April? Is that what you're saying?
Okay.
And so why would you buy? Why would you buy? Don't forget that one of the steps is that you need to select the right date. So why would you buy a future that is maturing in April when you need to use it in May? It doesn't cover you now, because by the time you get to May,
if we don't, what
so
if you don't
So you're not protected now. You can't have that in the question. It doesn't make any sense. You want to do a transaction in May, and you're buying something that will expire in April. So what use is that thing to you?
So you cannot have that in the question.
Something in May. You can't have that. It doesn't even make sense in real life too. You want to do something in May. You want to do something in May, and you're buying something that will expire in April. So what use is that thing to you?
You can buy that and keep
and then
now.
pause,
You can just buy and
wait,
keep.
wait. No, see, so one thing I try to tell students is one thing I try to teach students is don't memorize. Try and reason through why things are done the way it is and why we do what we do. You get what I mean? So that the way it helps is that the knowledge is not just you're just not memorizing to pass, but you are learning to use for your career as well. So think of it critically. I want to do something in May, and I'm buying something that will expire in April. Of what use is it to me? It doesn't have any use. So it doesn't make any sense in question, even in real life. It doesn't make any sense. That's what we said. And that is why you see in one of the steps, we clearly mentioned in the step, when we talked about the date, what did we say in the step? The futures you would buy would be the one that would mature on that exact same date that you need it, or what? Or
later.
Or what? The next
A day after.
one. It's pretty straight, because if you can't buy what will not be there for you when you need it. The reason why we bought it is because we want it to protect us. So if I'm buying something in May and it has already, if I need something in May and I'm buying something that will expire in April or March, it doesn't have any use. I think you get my point.
Yes, sir.
It doesn't have. So when you're training through questions, I always tell students, don't just memorize to pass exam. Try to understand. Maybe because it's what I do. Maybe because it's what I do and what I'm experiencing. Try to understand, why are we even doing this thing? Why are we even doing this thing? Why are we
It's not
taking it?
easy
And that
for
helps
us.
you. So that helps you to what do you call it? What that helps you to not only pass the exam, but you have the knowledge. You know these things, guys. It's just because you're memorizing to pass. You know these things. It's just like when I was talking about market. Everybody knows that if you're a businessman, you buy low, you sell high. It's what you know. So if you calm down and ask
It's not easy
yourself,
for us.
it's much easier to flow. So just calm down and go along and understand and put the flow. Okay, don't overthink it. All of these concepts are things that we know. Okay, all right.
Thank
So
you,
let's
sir.
summarize quickly. Yeah. So let's summarize quickly, and then we end up for it. So our futures price. So where is that quickly? I have options that we've not touched. So I guess we need to do options in our next class. But ahead of that, you can practice with some other questions for these two before that. Okay, so let's summarize quickly for our futures, and then we can then call it a day on this. Okay. So our price, our lock-in rate, is 1.0358. And I took my time to explain why we made this adjustment. So you know the reason why we're making the adjustment. We know why. And you know that if there's no difference, you're not making an adjustment. So let's do that quickly. So let's summarize. Our price is 1.0358. How many futures did we buy? How many futures did we buy?
98.
98.
So we bought 98. And each of these futures is 125,000. And our price is 1.0358. So does that give us in dollar? Then we have the part that we could not hedge with futures. What amount could we not hedge with futures?
50,000.
Out of our 12.3. 50,000. So we're going to go to the forward market and hedge that part with forward. So this is the remaining one. So we're going to go to the forward market and hedge that 50,000 with forward. So what is our exchange, the rate when we did forward? We just copy the rate and put it for the 50,000. So that is the rate for forward. What was the rate when we did forward? The rate when we did forward was 1.0356. That was the rate for forward. 1.0356. So that's what we're going to use to hedge the 50,000. 1.0356. Okay. All right. Let's get our calculator and plug that in. Then we can then round up for today. So I'm going to start with 50,000, which is the easier one to compute. 50,000 multiplied by 1.0356. 1.0356. So this is 51,780. And then the other one, 98,000 multiplied by 125,000 multiplied by 1.0358.
That is 12,250 multiplied by 1.358.
So that is 12,688,550. 12,688. Someone can just double check that for me with their calculator. So
Yes,
that
it's
plus,
correct.
okay, 51,780 gives us 12,740. Okay, so we're going to stop here for today, and then in the next class we're going to do the last method. We're going to explain why that last method is important and why futures is considered. But to read the quick summary of what we've done. So if they go with forward, where's my forward? If they go with forward, they will receive $12,737,880. If they go with futures, they will get 12,740,330. So which of them is that? Which of them is even higher between the two? 12,740, 12,737. Okay, so we've done forward 737, we've done futures 12,740. So we're going to do one more based on the question, which is the option. We're not doing money market because, like I mentioned, that's an FM topic right now. We're going to skip that. So we're going to do the option, and then we're going to look at the three. And then we would advise Tesco on which of these, the three methods in that question that they should go for. Because they can't go for all of the three, they have to pick one. So we advise Tesco at the end of the day when we do the computation for the three, which of them is most advantageous to them. All right, guys, I think I want to stop here for this free session. Okay, let me take a quick question or hand that up before I say goodbye. Anu Oluwapo, please go ahead.
Yeah, good afternoon, sir. Please, I want to ask, is this topic related to forex trading or am I just hallucinating? Thank you.
This is not forex trading. This is current. We explained at the very beginning currency risk management. If you are importing or you're exporting something and you are concerned about an adverse movement in exchange rate, you can manage that concern about an adverse movement using the methods we've treated in class. Forex trading is people that are into buying and selling FX. That's their own part of it. That is their own business. It's you as a person now, as a business that wants to buy something from the abroad, or you're selling something, you're trying to manage adverse movement to yourself. That's what we're doing. Okay. Bright, please go ahead.
Good afternoon, sir. My question is just this step that you optimize and listen for.
Okay, I lost it, Bright. Can someone else hear Bright? I can't hear him.
Applicable to all fees.
I lost you. Can you take that again quickly, please? Hello, Bright, are you there? Can you take that again quickly? Okay, I can hear you now.
Okay, I said the steps you optimize that you can use and schedule features, is it applicable to all feature questions? Like when we apply this step, you are going to get it done.
Yeah, so that's the step I would always so there are different methods to features. So, but however, whichever method you use, you would always arrive at the same final answer. So if you take a look at the icon pack, for example, on this question, they used a slightly different method, but it all arrives at the exact same final answer. But I like this method because it's standardized. So once you follow the steps, you're going to arrive at the answer. And so the only way for you to know that is for you to pick another question and practice with it. So that's what will tell you that. And if you want one, I can ask you to look at May 2022, question 6. May 2022 question 6. The reason why is because I also have the solution. So you can always go back to the YouTube channel and get the solution after you've done it. But first, do it yourself. First, do it yourself. Follow the exact same step and do it yourself. So you can do that for the forward and futures ahead of our next class when we'll do options. Okay?
All right, sir. Thank you very much.
All right. So, all right, guys. I'll leave you guys at this point. Thank you very much, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day. And please, if you think of anyone that think you can enjoy this free session for the diet, please let them invite them in so they can enjoy this free. I'm very sure that for most people that even pay for a course, they don't get this much value for paid courses. They don't get this much value for paid courses.
I'm telling you, you are 100% correct, sir. 1 million correct.
So if you think of any friend that can enjoy it, please just have them enjoy it for the diet. All right. Thank you so much, guys. And have a good day, everyone. Goodbye.